G'day, this is Professor Joseph Drury from the University of Technology, Sydney, and today I'm here to talk to you quickly about some common misconceptions I'm hearing around town and reading in documents, and just to make sure that everyone understands what the facts of the matter are. So I'm hearing a lot that there's a perception that the amalgamation difficulties were just bad luck or bad management by early administrators and whatnot. This is not correct. The amalgamations were never going to save money. KPMG projected that you would save $7 million in employee expenses over 20 years. Gundagai, in their submission to the Boundaries Commission in 2016, provided a copy of this table to the Boundaries Commission delegate, showing that if we look at past evidence of amalgamations, these ones were from Queensland just a few years earlier, that employee costs actually rose in amalgamated councils following amalgamation. So the KPMG projection of savings in employee costs were never going to happen. They were based on guesswork, and bad guesswork at that. If we looked at the evidence from previous amalgamations, we knew that employee costs would actually go up, and as you saw in my video last time, they have gone up. It was hardly a surprise. So it wasn't bad luck, it wasn't bad management, it was really bad decision making and some really bad advice that the New South Wales government received back in 2016. There's a perception that neither council was financially sustainable prior to the amalgamation. This perception is simply not correct. T Corp was commissioned by the New South Wales government in 2012 to do some financial sustainability reviews for each and every council in New South Wales. It did the reviews of Cootamundra in 2013 and decided that Cootamundra was in a sound financial position. That's on a 7-point scale. And it decided that Gundagai was in a moderately financial sustainable position on the same 7-point scale. Gundagai was one ranking below Cootamundra. Now, what the definitions of those scales are is the critical thing. So I'll read the definition for the Gundagai scale rating, which was moderate, and of course Cootamundra is slightly better than that. So if you read the T Corp document, it says a moderate council is a local government with an adequate capacity to meet its financial commitments in the short to medium term and an acceptable capacity in the long term. So T Corp, the New South Wales Treasury Corporation in 2013, was saying that both councils had adequate capacity medium term and acceptable capacity long term, i.e. they were financially sustainable. That is the best evidence we have. It wasn't perfect evidence by any stretch of the imagination. Now, some of you are aware that in 2015 IPART, with the help of what we were told to be a local government expert from South Australia, Mr. Comrie, and Ernst & Young, did their own review. This review just used 7 financial sustainability ratios, which is a case of extreme synecdoche. What that word means is it's ridiculous to just take a couple measures to try to get a picture of what's happening in such a complex organisation such as a local government. Moreover, they were using data that they knew was inaccurate, the population figures from the ABS. They were using empirical techniques, which any school child could have told them was inappropriate. Linear regression cannot be used for something that doesn't have a linear function associated with it. A lot of their benchmarks had changed to make things harder. Plus, they had this overarching criteria, which was adequate scale and capacity. And basically what that said was, if you were ever suggested to be an appropriate target for amalgamation, and you didn't propose an amalgamation with your Fit for the Future report, then you would be deemed to be not fit for the future, even if you pass the 7 financial ratios. That work was completely worthless. It was ridiculed in the popular media. It was ridiculed in the scholarly journals as well. Absolutely of no consequence, cannot be relied on at all. It was assuming to be either extremely poor work done by people that had very poor understanding of these concepts, or something that was politically motivated. You can make up your own mind. Okay, there's a concern I'm hearing that if there's a de-amalgamation, a lot of hard work by the staff particularly will be wasted. Some of it will, that's undeniable. Some of the good work that they've done trying to cobble this council together over the last 4 years will be wasted. But a lot of it will continue. The great work on the asset management will continue. The great work getting the IT systems up to scratch will continue. Those things will just be separated after de-amalgamation. The great work the council's been doing on educating its citizens about its financial condition, etc., that will more or less pay dividends in the future too. So yeah, some work will be wasted, but a lot will survive. I've been asked many times, can de-amalgamation be successfully executed? The answer is clearly yes. It's happened 5 times in Australia, it's happened overseas and in Canada as well. It is a difficult process. It's not as difficult as amalgamation. It's particularly when the amalgamated entities have operated as more or less separate operations like they have at Cootamundra-Gundagai. It's relatively straightforward. It's very doable. There's a concern about the cost of de-amalgamation and who pays. Well, you should be concerned. I will be releasing a video next week with the precise costings of de-amalgamation, but let me tell you, they're less than a quarter of the amalgamation costs. They will be less than $2 million. And I've researched them rigorously, so unlike some of the guesswork that's been done to this community in the past, you can bank that these costs will actually be the costs you incur. In fact, I've taken the worst case scenario in every single line item, so the picture I paint is the worst picture that it will be. In all likelihood, it will cost considerably less than what I'm projecting for you. Who pays? Well, if we look at principles of natural justice which underlie our whole legal system, generally the person at fault pays. So if I run my car into you, you're an innocent bystander. Whether I do it negligently or I do it because I get some bad advice from a backseat driver, either way, if I inflict the damage on you and you're innocent, I pay to put you back into a position as close as possible to what you were in prior to me doing the damage. I think of amalgamation in the same way. The New South Wales government was driving the car. The communities at Cootamundra and Gundagai were both innocent. They both produced evidence to suggest that they didn't like this particular amalgamation. Cootamundra had a better proposal, I think, with Hardin, and Gundagai wanted to stand alone. The New South Wales government was given incredibly bad advice by their backseat drivers, but irrespective, they're the ones that drove the vehicle into the community, and if we follow normal principles of natural justice, they will be the ones paying for the cost of de-amalgamation. Typically, however, in Australia, de-amalgamations have been paid for by the community, generally the breakaway community. There's a concern that jobs will be lost as a result of de-amalgamation. Let me state quite clearly, very clearly, that there will be no job losses except for the general manager's position if there's a de-amalgamation, and in all likelihood he'll pick up one of the general manager's positions in the new de-amalgamated councils. I don't believe in destroying people's lives because someone makes a political decision. I refuse to model job losses. What I've done is I've modelled savings through natural attrition. What does that mean? Well, what it means is I've looked at people's ages. We all know the retirement age. I've looked at particular jobs that need to be shed over time, and I've calculated when these people are likely to retire, and I model in the savings in the year after they've retired. Now, if these people retire or transfer earlier, great, we'll save even more money. If they don't, they will be guaranteed of their job until they get to normal retirement age. That's the only fair thing. You cannot right a wrong by committing another wrong on other people. Unfortunately, what it means is we don't get as many savings early up, and our cumulative savings are lower than what they might otherwise be, but it's the only morally just thing to do, I believe. And I imagine the community shares my opinion. If you don't, please let me know. Concerns about management, the size and the effectiveness. Look, you are top heavy in management. I think it was inevitable. I predicted it prior to the amalgamation. Inevitable given that the delegate himself on 3 occasions said that the councils would have to be operated as separate organisations, one in the north and one in the south. Well, if you're going to do that, you need management in each organisation, and then you need another level of management to coordinate the management. Hence you end up with bloated management like you have. That's where a lot of additional expenditure and employee costs went. Wages will also put up as people get more responsibilities. They expect more pay. Is your management effective? In the past, they haven't always been as effective as one might like. I don't think it would have mattered how good they were. This amalgamation was always going to cost more money. The evidence was quite clear on that prior to amalgamation. The management you have at present, I'm very impressed with. I wouldn't have taken this job if I wasn't. I personally get nothing out of it. In fact, I'm a little bit behind over it. My workplace gets lots out of it. But unless I was convinced that all your councillors, your mayor, your deputy mayor, and your GM and your senior executive were wanting to do the best thing by the community, I wouldn't have taken the job. As I say, I get nothing out of it, and I just wouldn't have been interested. There is no doubt in my mind that everyone involved, all your councillors, all your management, want the best outcome for the community, and that's all we can ask for. No one has their head right across this. No one could possibly have their head right across it. It's extremely complicated, and I'm only just getting across it after 2 months of working solidly on it. But you've got a management that cares about the community, and that's the most important thing. There's a perception of dislike. Can I just say, I've never heard a Gundagai person say they dislike Cootamundra people. They dislike the situation they're in. I imagine Cootamundra people dislike the situation they're in too, and they need to be more vocal about that if that is the case. Can I just say, leading up to community consultations, which will hopefully happen on March the 9th, I believe is a Monday, and March the 10th, which I believe is a Tuesday. The first one would be at Cootamundra, the second one will be at Gundagai. Now, can we all be very careful when we're talking that we apportion blame where it belongs? If you think blame belongs with the Boundaries Commissioner Delegate, or the New South Wales Government, or the previous Minister of Local Government, or KPMG, make sure you apportion it where it belongs. It doesn't belong to any of the people in either of these communities. And can we be also very, very careful that when we're talking about the situation, that we always remember and reaffirm that the people in the other community are perfectly fine people. We've got no issue with the people. It's the situation that we have an issue with, and we need to all be very careful about our language over the next few weeks. There's a perception that there's been a loss of grant funding since amalgamation as a result of amalgamation. Yes, it has. That's exactly the case. But there's also been those stronger community grants, capital grants, that we need to be mindful of, and the community's received a lot through that. Although that's a double-edged sword, that's going to be a millstone around the council, whatever happens for the next decade or so, in increased cost for maintenance and increased depreciation coming through on the income statements of your financial statements. So you've lost operating grant money, and that's probably more important, and yes, you have. There's a potential that you'll lose more in the future. And the Financial Assistance Grants Act, which is the act that governs the money that comes from the federal government to councils via state local government grants committees, you have a protection for 4 years. That's about to come off. There's a possibility that your grant funding will go down after that. I've contacted the Grants Commission to ask them for information. They haven't provided me with it, so I can't confirm either way whether that will or will not happen, but it's quite probable. That's why the legislation was changed in 2006, because what the federal government had seen was that following amalgamations, grant fundings went down, and that wasn't a good thing for communities. There's a perception that de-amalgamation will be stressful for staff. Yes, it will be. Amalgamation was stressful for staff. Being in a state of limbo and uncertainty is stressful for staff. Can I emphasise just one fact? The most important asset your community has is not your infrastructure, it's not the money in the bank, it is your staff. You cannot afford to lose your staff. Every opportunity you have to make things easier for the staff, to thank the staff for their efforts, please take it. You've actually got an incredibly experienced and talented group of staff for a rural council. It's unusual to find such experience and talent in rural councils. Look after them, because if you lose them, then you really do have problems. So it will be stressful, but so is the current situation. I think most staff, I've done a staff survey, and most staff are giving me the perception that they're prepared to cut the stress of de-amalgamation, because what it means is that in the medium to long term, things will be a lot better for the community and a lot better for them. There's a perception that worries me that de-amalgamation is the solution to all the problems in Cootamundra-Gundagai. You do have big financial challenges ahead of you, whatever happens. It is part of the solution. There's no doubt in my mind now. I've crunched the numbers. It is part of the solution, but it is not the whole solution. Irrespective of whether deamalgamation happens or not, fees and rates will probably have to go up to repair the damage done over the last 4 years, and changes will have to occur. That's just reality. We mightn't like it. I don't like it, but that's what's going to happen. If a deamalgamation happens, there'll be less pain than if a deamalgamation doesn't happen, and I will be releasing that sort of detail on the 8th and 9th of March at those community forums that I hope you can make. Okay, one last plug for my videos. Here's the link. If you know people that aren't watching them, please encourage them to watch them. Please look out for them every week or so. The more information the community has, the more power the community has. The less possible it is for people from Sydney to come in and disregard your views when you're reporting and you're thinking and you're talking about facts. It's very hard for people to simply dismiss you. So please get the facts, encourage your friends to get the facts, come to these meetings, ask any questions you have, and I'll stay there all night if required to answer your questions. Thank you very much for your time.